I don't know if I can still say good afternoon, but my session was supposed to be in the good afternoon, and I think I'm really thankful for the patience that the audience has had. I have been one of those people who have very patiently heard the entire panelists as they spoke, I think almost around 11 o'clock onwards. So I do have a lot of insights that they share, and I hope I am able to weave it in the conversation that I am bringing forward to all of you. Before I actually get into the topic, uh, and I do have a deck, and I hope that you don't worry about the length and the breadth of the deck, but I'll keep it very, very meaningful for all of us. First question, whether you are an organization that has given the responsibility to select few to lead the organization, or you are an organization that believes that everybody is a leader at all levels. Nevertheless, leadership is a challenge that I think everybody is facing today, especially in the light of the pandemic. And I thought, what better topic to bring to this conversation, especially in the HR best practices, to talk about future leadership. A little bit thinking about leadership, let me make you reflect a little bit about uh, what happens if you don't have good leadership in your organization. What changes if you have a poor leadership who doesn't carry the values, or you have leadership that's not good enough. I guess a couple of points would be, of course, you lose your people, you lose your best people because they wouldn't be wanting to follow leaders who are not great. You'll be losing your accounts or clients that you are working with because it's not the best leadership leading them there. And of course, there will be challenges around inconsistent behaviors across organization because it's a leadership that is not really carrying the mantle everywhere that it's going. But what happens if your organization is actually not having future ready leaders? What would be the repercussion of that? The repercussion of that is a slow death of the organization at some point in time, which actually eventually becomes one of those Forbes 500 lists that we talk about that busted after a few years, right? And that's what you will lead your organization to if you are not already paying attention to what kind of leadership you want to build as time moves forward. So as I move forward on this topic, can somebody just move the slide because I'm finding it a bit difficult? Thank you so much. So while a lot has been spoken about future ready leadership and a lot of people have written books, I feel personally there are few things that are very, very critical for any organization. And these are also from my own experience of leading an organization for the last 6 years as a CHRO of the company. And first and the most important is purpose-driven organization versus profit-centric organization, right? And when I say purpose-driven organization, a lot of you would be like, finally, at the end of the day, an organization stays there for profit. So what are we trying to say here? But if we all go back to all the history of any organization, when it actually set up, what would be the reason that an organization was founded? What was the reason that actually that organization came into existence? Most founders actually had a purpose around which they actually founded the organization. Over a period of time, that purpose actually somewhere gets lost, right? We start becoming an organization that's only focused on month-end targets, annual targets, etc. I think what's important for the next set of leaders is to ensure that how do you still keep the purpose of the organization going and not just make it all about profits at the end of the day. So I think that to me is very, very critical in today's time, because I heard a lot of panelists speak about that people are not ready to come and work for a meaningless organization or organization where they personally don't feel that they are growing or something is getting contributed into their lives. The second one is about bold and edgy versus making incremental changes. Future is going to be about letting go. We all have been taught many lessons in our own personal life to say how letting go actually makes an impact in our life. But how often are we able to let go of things in our organizations? If I have launched an initiative, I'm so stuck to it that even though I don't think that it's going to make any difference, I still want to carry forward that. I think leaders have to learn the art of letting go as they move into the future. The third aspect, I heard the panel on culture speak about it a lot, that culture is the secret sauce. Someone said that, that culture eats strategy for lunch. And if we don't want culture to eat strategy for lunch, then we have to create a culture that actually enables the strategy in the organization. And I am sure all of you do and are embracing technology in your world. But we all know that technology can be copied, right? You can buy it, you can acquire a company that has the technology and bring it into your world. But what cannot be copied, and even if somebody tries, it will take quite a significant amount of time, is culture. because it's very unique. It's like your personality. Anjali cannot become Arpita and Arpita cannot become Anjali, right? So it's something like that. And so it's very important that are you really focusing enough on creating a secret sauce through your culture? And last but not the least, today we are here on this platform talking about HR best practices, right? But I would like to say that while you listen, learn, network, but never apply or practice blindly. And that's what is also important for a future ready organization. Play in your context, because your context, your industry, your organization plays a very important role in how you will build your organization for the future. So while this is about future ready, as I believe in what are the important tenets, let's get into how do you create future ready leaders and what is it that you need. So if we can move to the next slide. Thank you. This is something that I'm sharing with you because I spoke about context, I spoke about purpose driven, and this is about Randstad. And I just thought I'll bring it here to help you understand what would be important for Randstad to do in order to be not into that slow death process, as I said, as an organization. And just if you can have a look, the first thing that the purpose of the organization is to touch 500 million lives by 2030. Right? And it's not numbers in terms of really the revenue targets or the profits that the organization is looking at. It's about how can each one of us at Randstad really touch lives of our candidates, our clients, and make a difference over there, right? And to drive that purpose, what is it that Randstad will have to invest in their future leadership to ensure that purpose is actually driven by the organization? And I'm not saying that we've done our work and it's all done and dusted. It's a huge process to move an organization, because finally, at the end of the day, we also exist for profits, right? But this purpose is what drives our people to stick along longer, is what drives them to say that I come every day to work with a certain mission in my mind. And it also talks about tech and touch, right? And I heard a lot of panels speak about how tech is enabling touch. And for us to reach that 500 million lives, just by being manually present over there is not going to help. We really need big technology to get there and do that. So that also means that digital data technology plays an important role in our world. And of course, creating a unique value, because there are dime dozen staffing organizations out there. So how does Randstad differentiate itself, right? So that's the other aspect. And of course, we all need a strong foundation to be wherever we are. We all work towards that. So then I move to how do we create, right? And what is it that we do differently at the organization to ensure that this is reached? Can we have the next slide, please? These are the things that I spoke about, what as an organization we also would be needing. And if you see, I have largely spoken about empathy and inclusive as well. And why have I mentioned over here? Because if we have to help every candidate really realize their true potential, then I have to be an organization which sheds biases, right? Because hiring, as we all know, is a process where maximum judgments and biases are applied, because we all are looking at a fit, we all are looking at a culture fit and job fit, boss fit in every aspect. So how do you ensure that the people with whom you are working, you are helping them to be consciously inclusive and not being exclusive? Because I think being in the recruitment industry, one of the biggest concerns every candidate has, I don't know why my CV was rejected, and I don't know why I was not called for an interview, and I don't know why I was not shortlisted or selected, right? And how do you ensure that you actually make each candidate feel that, okay, you came for the process, you didn't get it, but these were the reasons, and what you can do, and probably where else will I put? Because today it's not, it's not all about you not having the skills to do a job. It's a lot about the best fit, right? The match. It's sometimes organization also, which is not a great fit for you. It's not just about you all the time. So I think how do we help our candidates really understand that? And then of course, creating value, being inclusive, showing empathy. How many times, and I'm sure many hands will be raised, you really felt valued in an interview process? And you came out and you felt like, yeah, I mean, the interviewer or the panel which was there interviewing me actually got into my shoes and understood where I am coming from and who I am. Not many times, not often. And these are the things we need to change in the industry for people to really feel that they are being valued as talent. We are talking about demand and supply gap. We are talking about that's not enough talent. But the talent that is available in your country, is that talent really charged up to be part of your organization? What are we doing to ensure that that becomes thought leadership in the industry? Let's move to the next slide, please. Yeah, and how do we do that? I believe, and I'm sure many of the learning professionals would believe that we talk about 70-20-10 in the learning principle, right? And it always says that any person learns the maximum on their job, which is 70% of the time. But if that 70% of the time is going 80% focusing only on the operational part of the role, then how are you learning and who's thinking? And that's where we realize that only sending people into classrooms, only sending them for interventions is not going to help us create people who are going to be ready for the future or leaders who are ready for the future. So we started doing something called culture of experimentation, which is nothing but we have something called idea labs, we have something called CO for a day, where we only encourage people to come up with ideas, try it out. And trying out doesn't mean you do en masse things and then damage and then kind of try to do course correction. It's about just picking up handful of maybe one unit, handful of 20-30 people on whom you experiment. You fail, but you learn fast, but you're thinking in the process. I'm not so interested about whether I actually created 200 projects out of that. What I'm interested about is my employee getting an opportunity to think? I think Harshvendra Soin spoke about lack of curiosity is something that bothers him when he goes to the campus. And that's exactly the problem in the organizations. But are we really giving that opportunity to our employees to think? Or are we just saying, meet the month end target and then we are done? I don't really care beyond that. So how do you create that culture where everybody actually gets an opportunity to think? So culture of experimentation, culture of engagement is about making the manager accountable, because half the time the excuses are, my people are not free, they don't have enough time to work on your projects, right? And how do you ensure that that accountability goes to them as well? And they're also equally being part of the process, as I would say. And then it's also about the customer at the end of the day, right? You are existing here because of your customer. And I heard a famous quote by Rick Vera, who actually speaks a lot about extreme customer centricity, that your environment is never disrupted by your industry, your organization, etc. It's always disrupted by your customer. And customer is the serial killer that you have. So if you really want your business and your leaders to be future ready, it is very important that they're as close to the customer. And in our case, it's the client and the candidate as you can be, because otherwise you are dead. And making work meaningful. I heard very early on some panels speak about how do you create meaning at work. And for us, I'm very proud to say that that's an employee value proposition that we have, and which is called making work meaningful. And that's always reminding ourselves, why are we at work today and what is it that we are here for? And that's the mission, as I spoke, touching 500 million lives, right? And finally, true self-forward. Some call it whole self-forward, some call it belonging into the organization. But at the end of the day, if I can be myself at work, I think nothing brings productivity, nothing brings best work until you are true self-forward. So I think these are the ways which at Randstad, we are every day trying to create what we want to create in order to be future ready and in order to create future ready leadership. But at the end of the day, every organization needs to measure everything that it does. And so last point from my end would be around how do we measure? And if you can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, the way we measure is Randstad in Touch. And Randstad in Touch is not just for our employees to know how they are feeling, because we have a rigorous every month, way to get back to our employees to check with them. But it's also about our customer, our NPS scores, and are our customers as happy with us as we think they are. And it goes for both client and the candidate. And of course, the retention has to go up if you are applying all of this as an organization. Something that I've mentioned about MAP goals. So just to take 30 seconds to explain that. MAP is actually meaningful, aspirational, progress-based goals. These are goals through which we measure how many projects, how many movements within the organizations are actually being done to ensure that all that we are speaking at the highest level, is it really happening? And at the end of the day, it's also about the action learning projects. As I said, we don't measure how many projects came. It's about, are we having enough for people to keep thinking? Because thinking is very, very important. And if you look at data, I think 10% also people are not thinking at their jobs. And that's a big risk all of us carry as an organization. So that's very important for us to create. And last, as I close the session, because I'm standing between your award ceremony and and all the excitement that you're waiting for, I hope you, I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Sully, but there when Tom Hanks says, brace for impact, right? The idea is that times are never predictable. We never know what's gonna come in the future, but we know two things for sure. Your customer will always value quality, and your people will always look for meaning and purpose in life. These two things are stable, then rest brace for impact. Yeah, thank you so much.